So welcome everybody to the second installment of the Poetica Marketing Summer Webinar Series. That's a mouthful. In today's episode, we are focusing on SEO, search engine optimization, basically the practice of making websites rank. So to get started, I'll introduce myself. I am Pat from Poetica Marketing. We're a content marketing agency and events coordination company, which means we help companies stand out online and in person. I am the founder, technically CEO, creative director. Basically, I'm the guy that creates content. And I am fortunate enough to work with my best friend and wife, Regina, who is our awesome event coordinator. And I'm thrilled today to be joined by one of our incredible partners, Meesha Gerhart. Meesha, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. So my name is Meesha. I am the founder and head strategist at RedTree Web Design. We are a digital marketing agency that focuses 100% on website builds and optimization. Our sort of bread and butter has always been trying to work with brands that want websites that represent their brand, but also do a nice balance of creativity as well as functionality.
And I don't want you to sell yourself short there. You did add fashion icon, and I would say I look up to your sense of fashion.
Thank you. Yeah, I forget that I add that in because it's just so innate inside of my blood now that I have this immediate fashion sense that is just, exudes my personality and
Always,
humbleness, of course, as well.
always a killer fit. Always a killer
Yeah.
fit. Today we're covering SEO. If you missed our first session, we covered the framework of content marketing and content strategy with Jules from the Business of Marketing. Next week, we're covering blogging, and the following week, we are partnering with Dan Simpkins of DX Performance to talk about the ins and outs and technologies of email marketing. If you're interested in the blogging or email marketing sessions, let me know and I'll send you some promo codes. And we do have the content marketing and content strategy session on our website and also on our YouTube channel. So if you want to check that out, that is available. So we are going to cover a lot of stuff today. And SEO is an interesting topic because you can explain it in about 30 seconds, but it takes months and months and months of training to really start to get it. And it can take years for you to become proficient in it. So what we are going to do today is we're going to start off on the shallow end of the pool and we're going to wade our way out towards the middle. We're going to gradually get into the deep end with our swimmies on. And our goal for today is to get you to the point where you have a working knowledge of what to do with your website, how to talk to other professionals about SEO, and have that framework. So for when you are ready to take your swimmies off and go down to the bottom of the pool and grab those rings and everything, you'll be able to do that. That said, we are going to get a little bit technical today. So if any point anybody has any questions, I'm going to make sure everyone is able to talk here. Please feel free to interrupt, unmute yourself, ask your question, and we'll get you answered, and then we'll move along. But I just don't want us to go through, half an hour of you being confused because you missed one little detail. So please feel free to ask questions. We encourage questions. We want this to feel more like a conversation than some sort of lecture. But we'll start off today really simple. What is SEO? We'll talk about how we understand SEO in 114 words. We'll talk about a few case studies for SEO. I'll lay out some groundwork for us so that we have some common language to work with. And then Meesha's going to talk about SEO in your website. What sort of components do we keep track of? I'll talk about some common SEO mistakes. Meesha's going to talk about some UX best practices. That's user experience best practices. That's really going to go into, well, Meesha will get into that, but that's basically the building blocks of your website. And we'll talk about my favorite topic, SEO and blogging. And then Meesha will run us through some SEO tools and resources, and then we'll open it up for additional questions. So let's start off with what SEO is. SEO is search engine optimization. In the most simple terms, this is the process of getting your website found on Google. Now, we can broaden this because there are other search engines out there. There's Facebook, YouTube, Bing, all of these, there's lots of things that we don't even think of as search engines, but are search engines. And SEO is the process of getting found and discovered and ranked on all of those platforms. And when we run our SEO trainings at Poetica, we always start with these few paragraphs. And I encourage the brands and the entrepreneurs that we work with to kind of use this as their guiding star. And if you remember nothing else from today, I hope that you at least retain this part and you use this as sort of your compass in the future. So here's what you should know and remember about SEO. SEO, especially in the context that we'll talk about it today, in that Google lens, is a business. Google makes money by showing ads, and the reason it gets to show ads is because it's established itself as the top search engine in the world. And what's interesting about that is Google doesn't create content. It is making its money off of the hard work of other content creators. And so the onus is on Google to create search results that do a good job of answering questions by figuring out what is the best content and which content provides the best user experience. So which content actually answers the question or fulfills the need and does so on a website that is easy to operate and user-friendly. So whenever you're in doubt, and there will be a lot of questions you run into, and you're probably running into already about how to optimize your website, question I always come back to, is this good content? Is this good UX? And if we're checking yes on both of those, we probably have made the right SEO decision. So with that out of the way, let's look at some real world examples. I'll run through a couple case studies and then Meesha will run through a couple. But one that's been in the top of my mind recently is a therapist office that we started working with maybe a year ago. And they had a small team of about 5 or 6 therapists. And when we first started working with them, we revisited their website from an SEO perspective. So we rewrote a lot of content, resubmitted it to Google, and then started blogging twice a month on a regular basis. And through the traffic that they got and the inquiries that they got, they were able to double their team size. So they were able to double the number of therapists they had on their team, and they were also able to establish their first wait list for new patients, which was something they've never had before. So that was really great to see. Another example is one of my music blogs. My music blog, I recently sold it, so it's no longer mine anymore, but it was a really niche metal blog. I got a bunch of music memorabilia behind me, but the blog was small, it was niche, but because of the work that I'd put into it, there were days where it would generate 20 leads from bands, record labels, record stores, but it was also able to outrank household names like Rolling Stone and Vice, these multi-million-dollar companies that were working really hard to get traffic to their websites. And from this, also got me the opportunity to cover Roger Waters from Pink Floyd when he came to Pittsburgh a few years ago. So I also wanted a case that kind of showed the variety of things that could happen as well. So I will kick it over to Meesha to run through a few examples as well.
Perfect. So my first example is a brand called the Safety Sleeper. So RedTree's 2 primary brand industry types that we work with are e-commerce and professional services. So from an e-commerce standpoint, the Safety Sleeper, we were able to, from 2021, they had about a 4% conversion rate. And we, over the last 3 years, and this is 2024 year to date, have increased that conversion rate to 35%. Now, there's a combination of SEO as well as UX, obviously, in that conversion rate metric. But the biggest strategy from an SEO standpoint was they were almost too niched in the keywords that they were targeting. And there were a huge subset of their target audience that were searching broader terms that we weren't even actually ranking for. We weren't even trying to emphasize. So by going broader, and I'll use a tangible example. So they really wanted to focus on safety beds. And instead, there was a huge target audience that was searching for enclosed beds because they didn't realize that safety beds existed. So after doing some keyword research, we implemented enclosed beds along with a lot of various other keywords to kind of expand the overall keywords that they were ranking for. So increase a lot of traffic, validating them, and then UX kind of took the wheel over to convert them. The second one is a professional service industry. It's an internet service provider, ISP, right here actually inside of Pittsburgh. We were able to increase their organic traffic by 83%. Again, it was down to the keyword research portion of this, which was it was so simple. They were trying to target a keyword term called internet services. We deduced that being more specific in this case and trying to target business internet services actually got their target audience and then was able to actually climb the ranks because no one else was targeting business internet services. And then we also deduced that internet services was targeting a subset of residents and other people that weren't inside of their target audience. So by looking at a lot of keyword research and really optimizing those on page, we were able to increase significantly the amount of traffic. And then again, a lot of UX efforts had led to a 31% increase in their conversions.
Killer stuff. Thank you, Meesha. And a lot of what Meesha just talked about, UX, conversions, keyword research, we're actually going to dive into today. So I want to go over some ground rules and groundwork just so we have a common understanding of some of the vocabulary that we're going to use today. So whenever we think about ranking a website or a web page, we have to think about keywords and intent. So when Meesha's talking about keywords and keyword research, what we're really looking at is what are people searching for? What sort of phrases are they using? And every keyword has a certain amount of search volume behind it and a certain level of competition behind it, right? So if we sell women's shoes, that's a pretty common term, and we're probably going to run into a lot of competition and a lot of volume around that. But if we compete for women's red leather shoe, there's probably going to be fewer searches for that and less competition, and therefore we're probably going to be able to rank that better than just women's shoes. And her example with the ISP is a perfect fit for that. When we get more specific in our keywords, we throw away some opportunities for the sake of getting more specific and getting closer to our target audience. And we also benefit because we're often easier to rank from that. In addition, we also have to think about intent. And intent can help us figure out what people are actually searching for and what they want to do. So really looking at do they want to learn about a topic? Do they want to compare between competitors? Do they want to purchase a service or a product? This also feeds into keywords. Recently, I was looking at something for a fiberglass company, and we were looking at words like fiberglass window versus fiberglass window panel. What we found was that fiberglass window panel didn't have any search volume, but fiberglass window did. And the problem there was that word would have been inappropriate to compete for on the website because the intent behind people searching for fiberglass window is to actually buy a window like you would get at the hardware store and then install in your house. And that's not what this company sells. And so it would have been a bad fit. So understanding keywords and intent are really, really fundamental to building out content that is right for your website and appropriate for your target audience. And with this in mind, it's useful to understand SEO in terms of the buyer's journey and the sales funnel. And we often talk about this in business, and we talk about this in marketing, and everyone has different stages of the sales funnel and how they break things down. But basically, people generally move from an awareness of a problem to an interest in solutions to some sort of decision around how they're going to solve it. So if I'm a chiropractor, I might have people who say, man, my head really hurts or my neck really hurts. Why does my neck hurt? And then they might search for things like, what are some solutions for my sore neck? And then eventually they say, hey, I'm looking for a chiropractor near me. Now, the problem with a lot of websites is they focus primarily on creating content at the bottom of the sales funnel. So we'll have service pages. Like at Poetica, we provide content marketing and we provide event coordination, right? And so we have service pages for that. But that really does us a disservice if that's all we cover, because our target audience, our clients, are also looking for content up here. They're saying, how do I throw an event? How do I market my business? And then they're moving down and say, what does a content marketing agency do? And if I don't build out content for each of them, or each of these stages, I'm missing out on potential traffic to my website. And that's the same for every business as well. So one of the things that we can do when we think about blogging, when we think about our content strategy, is we can map out the process of the buyer's journey to figure out what people are looking for, what are they searching for, and then build content around each of those searches and interests that they have. And then we'll gradually be able to build trust and move them down the sales funnel toward our service pages or anywhere else that we might convert them. In addition, we also want to pay close attention to competitor research. Competitor research is the process of understanding how our competitors are competing in SEO. So what type of content are they building? How are they building out their websites? How are they getting backlinks to their website, which we'll talk about soon as well. Basically, what we want to do is understand who our best competitors are online, how are they building their websites, and how can we do something better. And when we start pushing beyond the status quo and we start building something that's faster, that's more articulate, that's more creative, we start moving towards SEO solutions that help us rank better than the competition. So I want to kick it over to Meesha now to talk a little bit about SEO and your website and some of the elements to pay attention to on your own website.
I'm writing down questions to ask you later as you go through this, Patrick.
Love it.
So we have a list here. I'm going to go to the next slide shortly. That's going to visually show you what each one of these things are. So from an SEO standpoint, one of the big things you want to look at is what we refer to as the anatomy of a website and or a web page. So there's a lot of things that goes into factors of search engine optimization. We've got a page title, URL, meta description. I won't read all of these off because I'm going to show a visual on the next page, but you have the list because Pat's going to send the deck afterwards. But if we look at the actual, you can go to the next slide. If we look at the actual tangible examples, so a lot of these things go into your search ranking. So on the right-hand side, you're seeing RedTree Web Design focused, or a web design agency focusing on brand. That is what we refer to as a page title. It's also what is usually inside of the tab whenever you're looking at a browser, but mostly this is what we refer to as the page title, and it's used a lot for the search engine result page. Underneath that, the gray text, that's what we refer to as the meta description. Again, we can talk a little bit more about that and how to use these two strategically. But just so that you know the terms and what is correlating. And then additionally, you have your URL, which, RedTree Web Design or Poetica Marketing, whatever that may actually be. Once you land on the site, so you've clicked on that designated site, you're going to come in and you're going to get something that hopefully at the very top of your page is going to be a header 1. Now, the rule of thumb that I tell everyone, and this is a little bit from a UX standpoint, but if your header 1 doesn't clearly tell a user what it is that your business does and why they should be working with you, then I would suggest revisiting your H1. Additionally, inside of your H1, header 1, I would always suggest trying to include your main keyword, right? So again, going back to that user intent. So we build websites. That's not something that someone is going to search for, but someone might search for website build or something along those lines. So sometimes as you're building out your H1, you might have to sacrifice SEO, inserting the right keywords for a different user experience. And sometimes that's just a battle. But usually a good rule of thumb is having your header 1 be the clear definitive of what it is that your brand does. It also gives the user validation that, hey, I'm in the right place. Underneath that, you have paragraph content. Again, this is a great place to start putting in a lot of the additional keywords, but also giving a chance to connect to users. Underneath that, we have two buttons. Those are what we refer to as call to actions, or CTA. Again, kind of going back to best practices, which we'll talk a little bit about a little bit later, but when someone lands on your site, they should know exactly what it is that you do, what your differentiator is, and then what you want them to do next. And again, this is a clear example of we want someone to look more into building a site versus optimizing a site. So when someone comes to your site, those three things need to be accomplished before anyone can click, scroll, or do anything else. They should know those three things. Going a little bit deeper into some of the technical, so where it says proof is in our project, that's what we refer to as a header 2. Again, headers are just phenomenal places in order to actually include some keywords. Again, in this case, we went with more of a user experience standpoint versus a keyword, but a great place to put some of your secondary or tertiary keywords. Links are hyperlinks that are sending someone to a different page. Again, we might talk about this a little bit more. Sometimes internal links are slept on SEO strategy. And then alt text is basically telling robots what this image is for. It also helps a lot with SEO, right? So if I'm searching through all of this and I see that there's 5 different images that have the, keyword web design or SEO or whatever that is, that just reinforces to robots that this is what that page is about. It also helps with accessibility standpoint for screen readers. If they can't actually see the photo, it has a little description as to what this photo is about. So, hey, this is a person holding a mobile phone looking at a website, right? Things along those lines. And if you can insert keywords, that's even the better. And then media is just media, right? So it's video, images, graphics, things along those lines. So this is the basic anatomy of a website or a web page.
Thank you, Meesha. I will say one other thing too. When a search engine crawls your website, they're not reading it from the front, right? They're reading it on the back end. And so the code, like when we have the proof is in our projects, that's wrapped inside H2 code. And that's how robots are going to be reading things. And that's why all of these details are so important, because it's not just the user experience that matters. It matters how the crawlers are reading the page.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meesha. So let's move on and talk about what are some of those common SEO mistakes, especially in relation to the framework that Meesha just built out for us. So one of the biggest issues I see over and over and over again are companies that create content without focusing on keyword research. So they just think of a topic, they'll write about it, and they never bother to see what are people actually searching for, how are they phrasing those questions, and how do we create content in a way that ranks really well for those search terms. There are a lot of companies out there that just create content for the sake of creating content, and sometimes that's fine, but that's best when you already have a captive audience. If you want to get more traffic to your website and acquire a new audience, then we really have to go through the process of keyword research. And towards the end, we'll look at some ways that we can start doing some keyword research in a way that's responsible and some of the tools that are available to you. Another big issue that I see over and over again are page titles. So I was looking at a website recently that their page title for the homepage was services-brand name, which doesn't seem so terrible at first glance, but when you really think about it, that's not really helpful from a user perspective. It's not great from navigation. It's also not great for the homepage's SEO. Oftentimes, the page title is a great place for us to think about our keywords and inject some of our key phrases in there. And so it's a really great tool from both the user experience, but also for search engines to help understand the page. I also see a lot of companies that just forget to include their meta descriptions on new pages. And this is often most common when you have multiple cooks in the kitchen. So you'll have multiple people who are creating a piece of content, and then one person, maybe an admin or somebody who's untrained, is responsible for publishing. And because of the nature of WordPress and Wix and all of these other tools, they often bury where to include the meta description. So it's just something that gets missed, and then content goes out and it never gets a meta description until I or Meesha or somebody else finally audits the site and they say, hey, where are the meta descriptions for these 200 pages? And then you have to go back and put those in. The other thing to note is that search engines have gotten sophisticated enough that they can often identify which paragraph or sentence from your page content is relevant, most relevant to the user, and they'll use that in the search results page, in that little snippet of gray text that Meesha was showing us earlier. When the search engine doesn't know what to do, it's going to pull in your meta description. So if you're missing a meta description, you're also making life more difficult for search engines. Another issue is just quote unquote bad copy. So your copy is essential for informing search engines, what your content is about. Obviously, it's important from a conversions perspective as well, because if we have compelling copy, if we have compelling CTAs, we have an easier time getting business. But this also gets us back to keyword research. If our copy on a fundamental level doesn't include any sort of keyword research, we're going to have a really, really, really tough time ranking well. Meesha talked a little bit about internal linking, and internal linking is really important from an SEO perspective, because the anchor link, or the anchor text, so basically the text that we hyperlink to over to other pages, is an indicator about what that page is about. So for example, if I'm on the Poetica Marketing website and I want to push people to the content marketing page, I might want to have the words content marketing hyperlinked over to the content marketing page. That's another indication that that page is supposed to rank for the word content marketing. Backlinking is, Meesha, I would love your perspective on this, but I think this is probably the biggest, most consistently ignored opportunity from an SEO perspective. And it's often most ignored because it's just hard. This is the hardest thing to do because everything else that we looked at so far are things that we control as site admins. These are things that we can go in and we can control and fix and update today. Backlinking is a little bit different. Backlinking is the process of getting other websites to link to our own website or to our own web pages. And these are important because they are indicators of trust to the search engines. So when Google is looking at redtreewebdesign.com or poeticamarketing.com, it's trying to gauge how authoritative is this website, how authoritative is this company in its sphere, in this industry. And it's going to be looking at the rest of the internet to figure out how many websites are linking back to us and which websites are linking back to us. So there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of technique, there's a lot of strategy that goes into a good backlinking campaign. We could spend days talking about that. I don't want that to become the topic for today, but it's really important, if you're not thinking about this already, to start thinking about this, because as SEO becomes more competitive, more and more companies are focusing on this and gravitating towards this through guest posts, press releases, interviews. Your competitors are more than likely grabbing onto this and building up that backlink portfolio.
Yeah, I will just add in, so you have it listed here, but I'd like to expand on it more, which is the guest posting. Another thing to take into account is to do what is kind of referred to as an article swap as well. So I might go to Pat and say, hey, Pat, you got a blog? I got a blog. Would you mind if you wrote an article? I'll put it on my site and say that you wrote it and it sends it back to your site. I'm going to give you an article and it's going to send it back to my site as well. Google has marked this as kind of a gray area, to be very honest with you, but it's not something that's sort of, penalized. So that's one thing to really look at, is if you have other people who have sites now, try to, if you can, have it be something inside of your niche, right? So I'm not going to go to Good Cooking America and be like, hey, can you put a site up about, or an article up about my website process? Try to find someone inside of your niche, even if it's like a larger business sense or something along those lines. Also, there is there's something that's called HARO, something about ask a reporter.
Help a reporter out.
Help a reporter out. Thank you very much. A lot of these services, Harrow has kind of moved to an online platform. The one that I know of is called Featured. And basically you tell them what your industry is. You can go in, reporters come in and they have a series of questions. Hey, how do I get backlinking on my site? And you as an industry expert could give them information. And then the exchange here is that you get a backlink to your site because they reference your name, the name of your company, and they'll link that back to your site as well. So I think there's another one other than Featured, but I know for a fact Featured is one of the biggest ones.
Mm-hmm. Great note. Thank you, Meesha.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, not having alt text behind those images is another big issue. I've seen websites where like 10 to 20% of their traffic is coming just from the images that they have on their website and the SEO authority that those images have. And so alt text is one, a missed opportunity for additional traffic, and two, as Meesha said earlier, it's just bad user experience. It's difficult for the robots and the search engines to understand what's in a graphic, and it's also bad user experience for people who are, Meesha, I'm so sorry, what are they're using like a screen reader or some sort of assistance there. So those are really important to make sure you include as well on all of your images. And now I'm going to kick it over to Meesha to talk about some UX best practices.
I will circle back on your last one too. If we have anyone in the house that's e-commerce based, not using alt text on your product photos is also a big missed opportunity. Because most of the product, like, yeah, you got your description and stuff, but most of your product pages are probably going to have a lot of photos showcasing your products. So it's another good opportunity of updating not only the alt text, but even if you want to get super fancy, you can update file names as well. So 2 cents. UX best practices. So I've got 3 different themes inside of here, and I really wanted to harp on the first touch point of a user is actually through a search engine result page. And I'll show you sort of how it all comes together in the last page. But at RedTree, we have a philosophy that most of the time people aren't going to type in poeticamarketing.com or redtreewebdesign.com. They're going to be going to Google and they're going to be typing in even our branded name. If not, they're going to be targeting a specific keyword or term, right? So Pat talked a lot about this, sort of building up to this. If you think about it though, the search engine result page is the first touch point that you have with your users. So I always like to have the rule of thumb as your title is where basically you're going to get ranked by robots, right? So how are you going to get found for a specific query like web design or content marketing? And then your meta description is where you can truly connect with the user. So even think of yourselves, right? As you're looking for a service or if you're looking for a product, how many of you are sort of being, you find the website, but you're reading the meta descriptions before you click into the site? That's your first touch point. And that's usually a highly slept on opportunity where people either try to put in more keywords or they, as Pat has said, don't even include any at all. So I always like to say titles are optimized for algorithms, meta descriptions are tailored for your users. So first best practice, look at those meta descriptions. And anyone here who's got WordPress or Wix or any of those builders, do a quick Google search. You can find out where to fill those things in. And you should be able to easily be able to fill a lot of those meta descriptions and titles in. So the next one is messaging, right? So this is clarity as well as intuition. So many times I see people who, so I'm going to use an industry term here. It's called the hero. So whenever you come onto a website, there's a big banner image. We in the industry call that a hero. One of the big missed opportunities is I see people including like the welcome to, right? Well, in reality, this is a huge missed opportunity of, again, going back to what does your business do and why should I, be doing business with your specific brand? So inside of your hero, be concise, be direct. I'm a content marketing agency and we work with, in person and digital, whatever that may actually be. Talk about your differentiator. right directly as you land on a site. Additionally, one of the things that I see is people don't have an intuitive navigation. Can't tell you how many sites that I've gone to that's like got the contact form buried underneath the about and then the leadership page, right? So you got to make it super easy for people to find the things that they need via the navigation and honestly convert. The other thing that I would really steer away from is using what I refer to as industry speak. So if your target audience is using a different term than you're using, that's something that you need to address. For example, we had a video production company come to us, and they were basically doing vlogging, right? They were following someone around and making the vlog for them. They called it documentation as a service. And I was like, does anybody call it that? Or are you all calling that? You're creating an industry speak term or a branded search term. So that's another thing to look at from a messaging standpoint. One of the easiest things to do is ask your target audience for input on this one. So if anyone's sitting there going like, I don't understand if I am saying things that are industry speak or whatever, listen, people love to give their opinions. If you ask people for an opinion, hey, would you sit down and look at this site? My target audience, I'll give you some ice cream, or I don't know, if you drink, I'll give you a beer. You could probably even just say nothing at all. People like to give their opinion. So take your site, find your target audience and get some input. See where you're missing some opportunities, because you might not know, you might be in the weeds too much. The last one is, honestly, it's just performance. So optimize your user experience is based off of 3 different things. Number 1, page speed. If your site loads slow, people will leave faster than they're going to stick around. So always look at the overall speed. This is also going to enhance your ranking on the search engine result pages. Google knows whether or not your site is not loading fast or if it is loading fast. So a big thing to look at is your page speed. Also mobile design. A lot of people just don't bring out the phone and look at their site, because you may be looking at it on desktop and it looks great. But once you pull it up on your mobile, the contact form is hidden, or your headers are overlapping, or God forbid in 2024, you don't have a mobile design. If you don't, we should really talk. Let's talk about that at the very, I will give you my personal cell phone number if you don't have a mobile design at this point in time. Seriously. Not actually joking on that one. But the last thing as well on top of mobile design is what we refer to as accessibility design. Now there's a lot of, and accessibility design is basically just implementing the accessible design practices for people with disabilities, right? So the biggest thing to think about with that one is, and there's a huge debate on UX designers, sometimes there are things that are not accessible, but they're brand aligning. So I will actually use our site for an example. We build websites focused on brand that's in white text. It's on a fairly light background that would not pass accessibility standards. The easiest thing for anyone to do here is there's 2 brands. There's one called UserWay. There's another one called Accessibility. And you can see it on our site. We have a little person that's at the bottom. And if you click on that, it will allow you to change the site based off of the accessibilities that you need. You need a higher contrast, you need larger font sizes, whatever that may actually be. Now, the nice part about this is if you are someone who innately needs a screen reader or you need a higher contrast, a lot of these platforms already know that, so they will immediately change your site based off of the user. It's a nice way of being acknowledged of the people that need the disability, as well as kind of staying true to your brand visuals. So look into those. They're fairly small cost of about maybe $150, $200 a year. And it allows that accessibility metric to be applied. So let's put it all together, right? So when a user comes and looks at my site, the first touch point is RedTree Web Design Agency focused on brand. I'm trying to get ranked for web design agency. Underneath that, we're web design. I didn't manage to include that. Studio specializing in impacting websites and delivering enhanced brand and high quality conversions. I'm talking to the user. And then as I get to the site, we build websites focused on brand, goals, and collaboration. So I'm continuing that whole entire conversation really emphasizing my messaging. I'm making my contact very clear. I'm telling the user where I want them to go as soon as they land on the site. So I've validated what it is they're looking for and what it is that we're doing, telling them to go to that next step. So putting it somewhat all together. I couldn't really show web speed and mobile design on this one, but they're definitely there. We monitor that very closely.
Meesha, I'm going to ask you a question here,
Sure.
because I think it can be really difficult to critically analyze your own website, especially
Okay.
if you've recently built it. And so, like when I work with clients and we're kind of going over their website, I pretend that I am just as dumb as a bag of bricks and I've never heard of their company before. So I have like totally fresh eyes. And so I can like be easily confused by their website. And
Mhm.
for me, this helps kind of figure out like, are they quickly establishing who they are and what they do? But also is their navigation as user friendly as possible? And I think you just did a nice job of sort of summarizing the action steps, but are there any other ways people can kind of get ready to approach their website or audit their website from a UX perspective?
I think from a UX perspective, if you're approaching and you haven't officially launched, is to honestly conduct some stakeholder interviews, right? So what do you need to see on the site? Have a conversation with people. Again, people like to insert their opinion. So you can do a lot of preemptive conversations. You can even send out user surveys to your whole entire audience and maybe gain a little bit of knowledge about your brand, but also kind of what do you need to see from an overall website interface. The other thing that I would suggest, kind of going back to your example, is there's always going to be somewhat of biased as well as industry knowledge, which is why I very much so focus on actually going for your target audience. So for example, I can't put myself in the shoes of the target audience for an internet service provider because I thought all internet was made equal. It is not all made equal 5 years into this relationship, Patrick. But if I pretend, and no offense to sort of your example, but if I pretend I'm dumb as a bag of bricks, right? I'm not actually doing the brand a good service because there's a significant amount of industry speak and there's a significant amount of information that needs to be presented that I would have no understanding about whatsoever. So really trying to think about your user. And I would also suggest that any brand that thinks that they know that their user, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can do some, if you want to make those assumptions, get a website out and then do some tracking afterwards. That's one way. But again, just asking some users, hey, I would assume when you come to my site, you want to see things about my portfolio. Is that true? Yes, that's true, right? So having some of those conversations and just knowing that we all have some biases.
Great answer. Thank you. And before we start talking about tools and open things up for questions, let's do a quick primer on SEO and blogging. The very beginning of this presentation today, or earlier in this presentation, we looked at that sales funnel and we identified how higher up in the funnel are great opportunities to capture search traffic. Blogging is where that comes in. It helps us reach multiple stages of the sales funnel so we can reach our target audience before they're even ready to make a purchase. So before they're even ready to click on your service page, they've already known, liked, and trust you because you've had those opportunities to build sort of relationship with them and establish yourself as an individual or a company that really understands their concerns and is a reliable source of information for them. So blogging can be really valuable. And some things I'll point out is that companies with blogs are 13 times more likely to generate positive ROI. And businesses with blogs get at least 50%, 55% more traffic than businesses that don't. I've seen that as high as like 427%, but it's a big SEO boost because of the traffic that you can get. And then businesses that blog often generate 67% more leads than those that don't. I believe all of these are from WordStream. They have lots of really, really great content on SEO and content creation as well. But if you're not blogging and it's not part of your SEO strategy, you're probably missing out on some pretty big opportunities. With that out of the way, and with 4 minutes before we get to questions, Meesha, would you take it away on some SEO tools and resources people can use?
Yeah, and if anyone wants me to circle back to this, I can. I'll go through it relatively fast. So one of the biggest tools, there's two biggest tools that I think a lot of people sleep on that are 100% free. The first one is your business listing through Google. So we refer to it in industry speak as a local stack, right? So if you're searching for pizza, I'm going to get a different pizza listing than someone who's in Denver, Colorado. But that's Google's local stack. So you're seeing the businesses and then you see the 3 different listings. The really nice part about Google My Business listing from a UX standpoint and also an SEO standpoint is the photo on top. You're seeing a visual correlation to a brand. So if someone is searching for RedTree Web Design, they're seeing our actual business as well as the meta description and the titles that are presented in the search engine result pages. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is, oh, wow, I can put a visual before someone even gets onto my site directly on the search engine result page. But the nice part about this is your website gets found when people are searching for local services. People would be searching for Web Design Pittsburgh, and then that would actually show up. Or if someone is searching for construction law, right? That actual service would show up via your local listing. This is free. It's easy. If you go to the next slide, Patrick, it's also really easy to optimize. So you can do a lot of things like pick the category of the type of industry that you're in. If you're a lawyer, you can put that in there. We're a web design company, so we put that in. You can also see where it says from RedTree Web Design. I can take that paragraph and add in some keywords to that about statement. The other portion is the reviews, right? So I have 38 different reviews at a 5-star, which honestly, I usually tell people if it's at a 5-star, I wouldn't really trust it. I would feel like people would pay for a lot of the 5 stars. Naturally, in a business, you're going to have a disgruntled employee, but honestly, we're just that good. So I don't know if that applies to us here. But the other thing that I think is really, really slept on is underneath the about, there's ways that you can add inside of your Google My Business links to various products, pages, and posts onto your site. And we have found this actually being really helpful in increasing ranking because it's a different link back to your site, increasing ranking for those specific pages, products, whatever it may actually be. And then the last thing that I think people are sleeping on the most is what we refer to as Google Search Console. Google Search Console is a free service, and it tracks what queries, what terms people are searching for to find your site. So you can see a graph, right? That's the graph of how many clicks, impressions, click-through rate, average position. But the nice part is right underneath it, you can start to see Web Design Pittsburgh. We had 13 clicks. We had 6,500 impressions, and you can't really see it because it's a little hidden behind there. But we're at an average of 6.8, which is the position of our site that's presented when someone is searching for that specific keyword. It's an amazingly free tool that will literally have Google telling you what people are searching for to find your site. So you don't have to guess, or you can make assumptions, and then Google will come back and say, no, you made a bad assumption. I'm showing your site for this term, and then you can go and course correct. The last things that we'll kind of show are just some Google properties, right? So there's a couple of different options. Google Analytics 4, this is your, tracks all the analytics on your site. Google Keyword Planner is something that was launched from Google Ads. This just helps you kind of identify some keywords, as well as Google Trends. If I'm trying to find keywords, I would focus on the Keyword Planner. Sometimes Google Trends, I don't find it to be accurate. 2 cents. Additionally, research as well as audits. Here's a couple of different, if you, really want to roll up your sleeves here and get into some keyword research and looking at some audits, these are some great tools. They are relatively expensive, and I would just frankly, watch like the expense, right? So some of these are $200-$300 a month. And for an agency like mine or Pat's, that makes sense. But maybe for a small business, maybe not as much, especially they make them very complex. So things like Google Keyword Planner might help you get informed, but then make sure you have Google Search Console set up that'll actually show you some more information free. And then the last one are just AI tools. So the AI tools, unless you've been living underneath the rock, there's ChatGPT. There's a lot of pros and cons to using ChatGPT. I've asked ChatGPT to develop out, a keyword strategy, and half of those keywords don't even exist, or they're not ranking with the amount of volume or difficulty. So make sure that you're watching it. Outranking is kind of like ChatGPT with SEO in mind, and Jasper is an AI content creator for marketing. There's a lot of marketing agencies that are actually using Jasper right now.
Thank you so much, Meesha.
Yeah.
All right, I know we've got about 9 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions for either of us? Feel free to unmute, raise your hand, whatever you'd like to do, and ask away, because I'm sure we have at least a few questions related to SEO or some of the things that we chatted about today. And while they're working on that, Meesha, I think you mentioned you had a couple questions that you wanted to run by as well.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I hear a lot of businesses getting stuck up on. Oh, let's answer Lisa's question first.
No, it's okay. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, go ahead.
How often do you kind of monitor like changes in what people are searching for? Like, does that change relatively often, or is it just kind of like, no, this is generally what people are searching for in your industry, in your space?
Great question.
It's a great question.
Do you want to go first, Meesha?
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing that's immediately coming to my mind. So I would do at least, I don't know you, Lisa, but if you're a small business owner, it doesn't need to be something that you're looking at on a day to day. I would say every 6 months to a year, you're kind of just checking in on some of the keywords, and even just kind of going to Google and saying, like, I don't know if you make pots, right? So like pot maker, and just making sure that that is aligning still with what it is that users are looking for. I would say every 6 months. But one of the things, per what Patton said, is it kind of depends on what it is. If it's a product or a service, it's every 6 months. But don't worry about it so much from the blog standpoint, because some of those are going to sunset. Some of them are going to be evergreen. But it kind of depends. If you have a blog that's performing really well, you might want to go and audit those keywords. But that's my gut reaction, Pat.
Yeah, my first answer is a lot of times you're going to see it while it's happening. So if you have a blog or a page that's ranking really well, you're going to notice when it's not ranking well, because calls are going to slow down, or traffic is going to slow down. You're going to say, what's going on? And then you'll dig in and you'll see, like, oh, people actually aren't searching for this phrase anymore. And at that point, you can dig into a little bit more keyword research. Other things too is you will often see just like in Search Console, and most of the time we check on client accounts, every month. A lot of them are every other week or so, just while we're doing work. But you'll see within there, how the volume has increased or decreased for certain phrases and how you've ranked for that. And if you've always ranked number one, that increase or decrease is a pretty big indication on how people are searching and how much traffic you're actually getting. Another thing you could look at is there's some seasonality to all of this too. And that's where to be honest with you, we mentioned Google Trends. I think it's a little bit more of a novelty than always a great business tool. And like one of my favorite things, like in this business, is like every around the holidays every year, somebody will post the trend graph for Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You," because every year around like Thanksgiving it spikes and then it just goes into non-existent for the rest of the year. It just hibernates. But every year somebody posts that, and you see the little dip, right, or the little increase right after Christmas, and then they'll say, we're here, and then you can map out the rest of the holiday season based off of the traffic for that. But depending on what industry you're in, depending on what you're writing about, you'll be able to see that seasonality in that chart, and that could give you an indication of, hey, by July of this year, when people are doing cookouts or something like that, we need to make sure that this page is ready and it's already ranked and indexed.
Got it.
On
Thank
top
you.
of this, On top of the seasonality too, I would also look at case by case, like a case by case basis. So I'll give 2 examples. So April of 2020, we had a medical equipment client, and she had hand sanitizer that just immediately went like skyrocketed. Well, everyone in April of 2020 was really worried about germs, right? So that was going to skyrocket and then crash back down. Same thing goes for, we have an e-commerce client that sells fasteners right now, and a really hot term is hurricane-proof fasteners. It's a lot of hurricanes going on, right? That's not going to be a constant. Hopefully, that's not going to be a constant. So you might also, I don't know what you call that. It's not really, I don't know if it's seasonal or if it's just situational as well.
Situational. Yeah. Thank you both. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Come on, people. I thrive on questions.
Lisa, or no, that's all right. Yamariam, did you have a question?
Yes, hi. My question was regarding competitor research. I know you talked about it, but I just wanted to know in detail, like what things we can do exactly to help us rank our website higher than our competitor.
Yeah, great question.
You can take this one.
Okay.
I did the last one.
No, absolutely. So this is a fun question, and it's something we could have spent another hour talking about. The very first thing that I do personally, just so I can get a baseline, a very, very quick baseline, is I will go to Ahrefs, which is another SEO research tool, and I go into the website authority tool, and I just type in their URL, and that's going to tell me a few things. It's going to tell me their like domain rating or their authority score. So basically, when we talked about backlinking, we were looking at how authoritative or influential a website is. So it's going to give you a numerical score for their website, and it's also going to tell you how many backlinks they have to their website. So this is going to give me an overarching impression of how much legwork they've done from an SEO perspective and how influential they are within the industry or within the space. That's a gross oversimplification, but that's basically the baseline there. From there, I like to actually sit down and look at their website. Sometimes this is going to be impossible just to look through every page and take notes because some websites are enormous. But what I'm really trying to understand is what are they ranking for and how do they set up their pages? So what type of attention do they place into creating content? So for like their blogs, for example, how long are their blogs? What type of content do they have in there? Are they building original videos for every blog? Are they creating infographics? Are they interviewing experts? Are they embedding social media posts? Are they embedding some of their own reels? Basically, what level of sophistication and research are they putting into each individual page that they're building? And from there, that kind of gives me an indication of like, okay, this is where they are. I might be down here now. I need to work twice as hard as they are to exceed their content. And I mean, that's kind of a starting point, but we really want to have a baseline understanding of how they're creating their content and what we need to be doing to outrank them. Meesha, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you did a great job, right? So that's a lot of the factors to look into it. The biggest thing, and I don't know the exact situation, but the 2 things that are coming to my head is also realizing that SEO is a long game, and to not sort of shoot too high and then, you know, I don't know, feel bad that you've sort of fallen short, right? So you use the example of shoes. Right. So are you trying to beat your competitor for shoes, but that competitor has been around for 10 years, been ranking for shoes and you know, is got a significant amount of backlinks. So you're not going to be able to beat that competitor at the shoes term, but maybe you would be able to beat them from a women's Oxford dress shoe, right? So it's a longer keyword term. You would still be ranking for that. And then Google is going to see, oh, people come to the site and they purchase or they're engaging because you've got a stellar user experience. I can already tell. based off of your focus on SEO. And then that's going to rank you higher. So we kind of refer that at RedTree as like side door keywords. So how can you start to rank for some side door keywords in the long game of eventually getting to the shoe standpoint? So that's another thing to take into consideration.
Meesha, we're a little bit over here.
I'm good.
Do
I'm
you
good
have a
for
couple more?
another 5. I'm good for
Okay.
another 5.
Because we do have a few more questions that came in. Diane Danforth sent in a question. Chaz, I'll be sending
Hi, Diane.
I'll be sending out a email recap later on that'll have a link once we get this up onto YouTube. So definitely, yes, you will be able to watch the seminar later in its entirety. Meesha, I don't know if you're able to see Diane's question. She had a good one though, and I would love to run by you.
I'm not.
Okay, here it is.
Oh, haha.
It's in the
Q&A.
Q&A section.
Got it.
I have a URL for a product that uses a product name that customers don't use. So isn't the best option from an SEO. So that isn't the best option from an SEO perspective. Should you create a new page with a better URL?
Oh, it's so challenging because when you update a URL for a product page, you're starting from scratch. So I would say if you're not seeing any decrease in any kind of traffic or position or anything along those lines, I would leave it alone. We do this a lot for our clients where the URL is a slight variation. I can say if it's like, if you're like going from white to black or something like that, that's a horrible example, but that's the quickest one I can find. I would keep the URL and just re-emphasize the right keyword on page. But again, if you start to see a little bit of a dip, then you can do it. But I wouldn't change, because basically if you update your URL, Google recognizes this as a brand new product and you're starting from scratch. What do you think, Pat?
I think, yes, that's another issue. And then there's the whole nightmare of like 301 redirects and things like that. The alternative might be to use some of that customer language on the page and just refresh some of the page, some of the page language, and then resubmit it to Search Console so it gets re-indexed by Google. And then it's competing for both phrases, both your company product name and your customer language as well. Does that answer your question, Diane?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Carrie, we'll get to you in 1 second. Nicole, I think I saw you raising your hand earlier.
Yes, I did have a question.
What's up?
I actually have 2. Hi. I have 2, but they do go hand in hand. The first one, so they're both related to GA4 versus Google Search Console. So my first question is, what is the differentiator between these two? Because honestly, I kind of thought they were the same thing. And then the other is, when I've touched GA4, I found it very overwhelming to get into as a beginner. So like as a beginner, what are some like pages on there or like specific metrics that you're like, just kind of stick to these like 2 to 3 and you'll be good?
So I'll take this one, Meesha. The simple difference between Search Console and GA4, Search Console lets you know how your website performs on Google, and GA4 tells you how users use your website. So Search Console is really for understanding how you're ranking, and GA4 is really to help you understand how people use your website. To your point about GA4 being difficult, I think that is a shared frustration between me and Meesha and everybody else who's had to go through that transition from Google Analytics. Google is notorious for building products that just aren't swell. And that's ironic because it makes its money off of making other companies do a good job. Actually, our colleague, Zach from Root and Branch, he has a fabulous YouTube channel that does a really good job going into how to use GA4 more effectively. Yeah. And Nicole, if you want to connect offline, I'd be happy to kind of walk you through at least how I walk through GA4.
Yeah, so I will answer the tailor end of that though, Nicole, because I feel like other people will probably want to know. So there's 3 different things I would focus on for Google Analytics. When you first come in, there's sort of like this dashboard, like it just kind of shows you variety. It'll show you a difference of the amount of visitors that are coming in compared to a previous period. That's something to sort of look at. But I would focus on what is referred to as default channel group. And that just shows you where traffic is coming from, right? Or is it coming from organic? Is it coming from social? What different groups is it coming from? And then also look at something that's called pages and screens. So it just shows you how many users are going to designated pages, and you can start to see if there's increases, decreases. If you just focus on those 2 things, I think you'll be way ahead of anyone else.
All right, sweet. Thank you guys. That helps a lot.
And then for our last question, we'll go to Carrie. Carrie
Gary!
asked, if you are entering a new market for the
Hey,
services,
Meesha.
the services that you offer, what is the best way to quickly build SEO, especially when there are some established businesses there, meaning a new state? Meesha, do you want to take first stab at this one?
I can take a first stab at this. I'm actually going to steal from your pocketbook on this one. So Pat has a good idea. I would say, so Google My Business, setting up a new Google My Business in a different area is also kind of key. It needs to be another physical address. That's the only
Did it.
Perfect. And then I would say the press releases and then the geography specific chambers or whatever that is, getting some backlinks based off of those geographical that Google knows. This person is in Florida.
Gotcha.
This person is in Pittsburgh, and they're linking back.
Right.
Really, really help. Go ahead, Carrie.
No, I said, okay, that's great. Thank you.
Pat, do you have more?
Yeah, the other thing I would look into is, and this is a great Meesha question too, but revisiting the website so that you have sections for Pennsylvania and whatever your new state is. And then don't be afraid to get granular within those states too. So, for example, I've been consulting with a telecom company based out in Ohio, and they have tentacles out into Illinois, Indiana, some of the surrounding states. And for a long time, all they've ever done is competed for their services on a state level. So like Indiana internet service. But really what they're doing is they're marketing in really niche rural towns, and they never bother to build out pages for those individual towns, even though there's traffic around there. So one of the things that we've recommended as they're rebuilding their site is to have individual pages for those individual towns and the services that they provide in there. It is a longer play. It's a longer upfront play to build out all of those pages and then to add them on as you systematically expand your reach. But that's going to help you rank on a hyper local level, just like that Google business page is going to do. Having an additional page on your website is going to help you rank locally too.
Thank you so much. So it sounds like we're doing a lot of the right things. There's a couple other things, but I guess part of it is being patient.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think the name of the game sometimes with SEO is, I mean, you can get lucky, but it's a long game. And if you want an immediate slam dunk, AdWords would be like an immediate slam dunk. But I usually tell clients, wait 6 to 9 months before you really start to see like huge impacts. But yeah, it does sound like, and I would say the only thing I would add on to it is if you can do any kind of blogging around specific things inside of that area, that landing page having more thought leadership and more content to boost would also help. So if you've got an article about estate planning in Florida, make sure that that's referenced and then linked out to that blog post, as well as that blog post linked back to that landing page for that specific location.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys so much. This was great.
You're welcome. And Meesha, I think, hit the nail on the head there. And I just want to emphasize that because your SEO traffic is going to do this. It's going to go up and to the right slowly, but AdWords can get you that traffic right away. So one thing you could do if you have budget for it is immediately start those AdWords, work on your SEO strategy, and eventually you could turn those AdWords off because your SEO strategy ideally is already going to be pumping in that traffic for you, and you probably won't miss a beat that way.
But also, I would say don't turn them off. So I usually like to tell people, like, start your AdWords and then start your SEO. And as these start to sort of switch off, you can eventually eliminate. but I would see it would be doing a disservice if you just kind of eliminated the AdWords, as this is sort of climbing. So
a very important asterisk.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meesha.
Yeah.
But that is all we have time for today. Really quick, if you guys want to reach me, you can find me at poeticamarketing.com. You can also email me at patrick@poeticamarketing.com. And you can also reach Meesha at redtreewebdesign.com or Meesha at redtreewd.com. And there is that phone number. Is that one that they can actually get you to directly, Meesha? Because you were plugging that phone number earlier.
Yeah, between the hours of 9 to 5, you can get me via that.
Great. Maybe don't text this number, but you can get Meesha directly there.
I'm very active on LinkedIn, everyone. You probably have a better shot of getting me faster on LinkedIn than you probably do texting me. So
perfect. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I'm going to get this video processed, lightly edited, and then I will get it up online. And then either last thing today or first thing tomorrow morning, I will get you the video so that you can watch it in its entirety. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.